Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Marques Brownlee. That's MKBHD for some of you, but for us, he's just number 82 on the New York Empire. Marques, thanks. I'd say finally joining me. It's been about a year and a half. I've had most of your other teammates, but glad to get you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And what a great time to have Marques because the Empire are revving up for their second straight championship weekend. But before you got there, you had to get to Atlanta in the playoffs as the 2 and the 3 seed. Because Atlanta dropped a game to Tampa Bay, or they dropped a few other games too, but that means that the Empire did host. That game just happened. A 1-goal win. It was a game-winning catch by Ryan Osgar. Anybody listening to the show probably watched the game, knows what happened, but you're on the D-line. So for you, as the offense did struggle in that first half, when the defense in the second half started to get those breaks, was there something that was said or a moment that you're going to remember in particular from that comeback?
There's a lot of, anytime there's a comeback, you always want to find like the moment that it started turning. I don't know if we have like a single moment. Maybe it was just halftime. Like we went down, obviously, and, O-line gets broken a few times. And we did get, I think, one break in the first half. We knew we could get breaks. It was just a matter of stringing them together and making the right calls and getting the right lines in place. So, yeah, I'd say it's probably like halftime where we were just like, all right, guys, we know we can rattle off breaks and put together a good game against this team. If they can be up by 5, we can be up by 5 in the next. And we've come back from 4 or 5 goal deficits in one quarter before. So obviously we don't want to be in that deficit, but I feel like we knew that we had a shot at any point during that game.
I mean, what was the difference between the first time he faces Landon down in Atlanta, which also winds up ending when the clock says 0-0-0, and then the second time? When I say home, I do mean at Granite Mills Park. Thank you for them as well for hosting us.
Yeah. The first game was definitely more of a filling out process, at least for me. I know it's the first time I've ever played against pretty much everyone on that team. And it was, their home court, which is, the crowd's on their side, which gives them a little energy and everything like that. But the second time you play, it's really hard to beat a team more than once, as we find out all the time. And the second time we were able to game plan a little better for them. They, of course, make adjustments for us. But I think that was the difference is we'd now seen their zone. We'd now practiced specifically with their zone in mind. And we got to get reps in with this, anticipating this game. So made a big difference.
Yeah, one of the major differences defensively even was the first time around, if I remember right, you had one of these solo matchups with Antoine Davis, and it was more of a 1v1. This time around, it was a lot of doubling. It was a lot of Ben Katz, as you know, where he is in that poacher area, figuring out when to time his double team, whether it was on Antoine when he came into the backfield or one of the other cutters when they would come into the backfield. Certainly one of the big things that turned the tide in that game. But defensively, Antoine Davis is a very difficult matchup. And you usually have playing this to Jeff Babbitt, usually have guy number 2 or receiver number 2 is the big, whatever the other big receiver is on every team. And what has it done for your game to match up with the weapons on the Empire O-line practice after practice after practice?
It's been pretty great. I mean, obviously it's great for your own team having a bunch of awesome cutters on O-line. But for me, when I'm covering Ben Yacht, Ryan Osgar, a bunch of extremely talented people year after practice after practice. Jack Williams is one of the hardest matchups in the world. That sharpens the D-line as well. So if the O-line makes the D-line better, the D-line continues to make the O-line better. And it's just sort of a cycle that repeats itself. So it's great. It's great for us. I don't know if any other team, I think the goal is for our hardest matchups to be each other at practice. Because even if teams have 1 or 2 of the best cutters maybe in that game, it's almost impossible for them to match all the way down the line. And our D-line is going to be ready.
Yeah, I mean, as far as seeing the numbers or some of the advanced metrics that we're going to see in the future and Ultimate, now for the first time ever for the AUDL, we're seeing receiving yards, we're seeing throwing yards, those kind of things. But someday I think we're going to see total steps or mileage that they have to watch a soccer game. And Jack Williams has got to be pretty high up there in the league as far as distance traveled in the amount of one game.
Yeah, it would be interesting because I know, it's actually funny more in the last couple of years, I've realized that I probably, even though I'm more of a defender and probably a better player, I think I might travel less because I know more where to concern and where I can like loosen the leash a little bit.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, like, are the highest mileage players the best players, or are they just the players covering the most cuts, or are they just because you run down the pole every time on D-line, that's plus 70 yards right there every point you play. But like, if I'm running horizontal back and forth as the deep in a zone, maybe that's just going to run up the most mileage, even though it's not the best player. So yeah, that'll be fun to watch when that sort of advanced metric stuff gets better.
Yeah, and from the broadcasting perspective, I find that it's those kind of questions that you spend minutes and hours and tens of minutes trying to do the math yourself. And then the conclusion you come to is, oh, it's a guy that played the most points, or it winds up being this thing that's kind of unnecessary. And yeah. But beside the point, the Empire are going back to championship weekend, looking to repeat now from their 2019 title. And from that championship game against Dallas, fans will remember your layout grab. But for me, I always seem to speak about the break throw that came after that, the presence of mind to immediately pop up and throw that break throw. So that was my question for you. What would you, as impressive as the layout was, which one are you more proud of even? The break throw that then came after the layout, or was it the layout grab that kind of makes you feel that you did your job for the championship?
I do feel like it was the throw, actually. Obviously, the layout is the highlight, and most people are excited to see the layout, and that's awesome. And I'm glad it did what it did. But I tore my rotator cuff on that catch, and I still threw about half field, like inside flick break. And it's not one of the throws I throw very often. Like there's a lot of space on that side of the field. And if you watch the replay, like that cut develops before the throw to me even goes up. Sam's all the way on the other side of the field when I catch it and he's wide open, but Dalton already put the mark on and I had to break the mark. So I feel like I'm more proud of the throw, actually. I feel like I made my craziest bids probably back in high school. So that was just one more for the tape. I'm glad it was on camera, but the throw I was pretty happy with.
Yeah, I actually tell people, as far as watching Marques Brownlee layouts, go back to some of the Rumble days. There were days when I would call your Rumble games when it was just force everything in the middle of the field. And you'd have 7, 8, 9, not necessarily blocks, but just full body layout. So for younger players, what would you recommend as far as not even learning how to lay out? I think that's some bit of instinct, but making sure you don't injure yourself on those layouts. And I know, the rotator cuff injuries do happen, but how do you make sure you get chest level and not pick up these injuries so you can continue to go about your game?
Yeah, I mean, that's all about the landing. It might seem obvious, but like for me, it came with trial and error. I've torn both sides. I've hurt my chest. I've hurt different things based on the way I land. And I guess when I broke my hand, that's probably when I most started thinking about the way I land, because you can't keep landing on the broken part of you. So you have to adjust your form and get better at it. So the best advice I'd probably give is to just watch players who lay out a lot, how they land. And a lot of times, if they're like sort of articulating their body in the air, they're spinning back to try to land usually as flat as they can and sort of on the top half of their chest. So just landing fundamentals. Same thing in basketball. Like the most injury prone players have the worst landings, even if they're athletic. So it's about the landing.
Yeah, I mean, and Jeff Babbitt always speaks about putting on more muscle and making sure as much cushion as you possibly have in the landing for thin and tiny guys. It was a lot of bone that hits ground pretty quickly. But yeah, speaking of golf and basketball, those are two of your first sports, if you will. But we are switching gears a bit, going all the way back in time now to Columbia High School. For those in the Ultimate community, you know Columbia High School rather well. So how did you get your start with Ultimate? I think it's actually pretty, pretty typical for high school Ultimate players. And then if you want to mix in the golf and the basketball and how those different sports kind of merge and how you balance those in high school.
Definitely. I picked up Ultimate right before high school, Maplewood, New Jersey, CHS obviously being the birthplace of Ultimate, but it was a summer camp right before my freshman year. And I've been playing golf and basketball before I played any Ultimate, but not really at a high level. Like I played decently high level junior golf, but when I found Ultimate and the team and just immediately loved playing and loved the team and just only wanted to do that. And also CHS didn't have a golf team. I eventually helped start one, but there was no team when I started. So it was just like immediately into the deep end, played as much as I possibly could. And that sort of there's a long lineage of players who have come from that same path of like CHS Ultimate. And of course, a lot of other high schools now having really good programs and introducing kids to coaching and structured Ultimate at a young age. So it was great.
Yeah. In terms of the differences between Ultimate and golf, as far as an Ultimate player, do you consider yourself somebody who's kind of self-motivating or in your own head in terms of the same way that, golf is very individual? Well, I mean, I know there are other teammates that you have that are very much, I need to get up with the rest of the team. I need to get revved up, or I need to have my energy match the team. a cough, TJ Stanton, the guy that you know well. So, and then there's those players who are more individual.
I would say, so I mean, golf is such an individual sport. You almost have no choice but to be internally motivated. I found with Ultimate, especially as I played for better and better teams, the aspect of trusting your teammates became really important. Because even at a younger age, playing high school, maybe Devil, maybe with Stevens, like there was still an element of like, I got to do this all myself, which is not great at a high level. That is where you sharpen a bunch of different tools. Obviously, you get better at a bunch of different things, but trusting your teammates became such a big element of playing well at a high level, which doesn't really exist in the golf world. So that's probably the number one thing. Basketball, it's of course a parallel too, but yeah.
As far as your ultimate skill set goes, obviously you wouldn't remember this, but I'd say about 10 years ago or something, I was at playing for Hofstra. I was at a tournament down in Delaware, if I remember right. And Hofstra played Columbia High School. And there was a kid on that team who had the most ridiculous pulls that I had ever seen for a teenager. And that, that teenager was you. So at that time, I asked myself and my teammates then 10 years ago, where and with whom did he learn how to pull like that? And so now 10 years later, I get to ask that question to you. Where the heck did you learn how to pull like that? And with whom did that process begin and help?
Yeah, pulling is interesting. I've played O-line and D-line on various teams my whole career. I remember in high school, actually watched a lot of tape, watched a lot of different pullers and tried to figure out my body type, what I could best do. Because it's kind of like golf. If you're a big, long lever of a person, you just kind of have that natural speed advantage at the end of the lever. And I was, throughout of all of high school, I was an IO puller, IO backhand. I would rip it out over the other field and it would come back and helix back and bounds IO. And I got really, really comfortable with that. And I think it was probably around, I don't remember, I think it was like 2013 or 2014, wore gloves a little bit more, started messing with my grip and things like that. And I just started getting uncomfortable, like throwing the IO pull and it would just hang out and never come back and bounce. And I was like, suddenly I'm a bad puller. If I'm doing that, I'm not good anymore. So I need to adjust. And I think I saw a lot of good Jimmy Mickle pulls, a lot of good Nick Lance pulls, I think, where they're starting them out OI. And I tried that a lot more, pulling from the far right side of the field, and found way more consistency. So it's the same lever, the same power, the same speed, but way more consistently able to land it in bounds. So that's mainly it. I mean, I don't know if I had anyone teach me how to pull in the beginning. I think it was just like, throw it as hard as you can, start the pull off, start the point. But it's watching tape and figuring out what works best for your body.
Yeah, that's a little more of a detailed answer than Ryan Holmes gave. His was just spend a whole summer just pulling 50 times every day, and eventually something will happen.
That'll do it too. That'll definitely do it too. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of practice. And you did get plenty of practice when you were, again, becoming of age, whether it was at Stevens, where you had, even at Stevens, you had your first AUDL season. I mean, that's like a little thing where before coming back from the MLU to the Phoenix and then to the Empire, you actually played for the New Jersey Hammerheads, again, way back at the beginning of the AUDL with some of your current teammates now. So, I mean, what was your first introduction to professional ultimate? I know the league was not as, we'll say, competitive as it was now, but what was your first introduction then?
My intro to pro ultimate was, I would say it's our second or third game of the season when we went up to Toronto, and they had their, at the time, largest crowd ever to come out for an ultimate game, and getting booed by 2,200 people and getting doubled up and having the most fun, like just absolutely the most fun. No, it was fun. Obviously, New Jersey doesn't have a pro team anymore, but it was fun to rep the state. There's been lots of great players out of New Jersey, and I stand by that. I think if you put an all-state, all-time team together, New Jersey would be like a top 10 state, easy. But no, that was my intro. It was 2013. I was still a teenager. I think I was the youngest player in the AUDL, and I think I also led the league in turnovers that year. But worth it. Worth every single game we played was fun.
Yeah, so not even for the Hammerheads, but around that time was Columbia High School. We also spoke to him just last week, was Anthony Nunez, a Columbia graduate, a guy you've known for most of your entire adult life since you were a teenager. So how do you think you've seen him grow, though, as a coach between Columbia High School or Devil and then with the New York Rumble, and then to now with the Empire.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had a lot of coaching continuity over the years, and Nunez has been a really big part of that. And it's funny. I feel like he's the same, like, super even keel coach that he's always been. I've also had, stretches of years with other coaches who have, changed in their style, but Nunez has always been, wait for the right moment to know what to say, one or two really decisive things, and then let things evolve and see how it goes. And I feel like that's been super helpful. And yeah, just getting better as a player, it helps a lot to have coaching continuity because you can sort of measure yourself against your previous self. So it's good.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch too, between he and Charlie Hoppus and Brian Jones 2 years ago, the ways that the AUDL is changing. And then especially with Atlanta, with Miranda Knowles just like leading the line on what is possible with the zone. And I was going to ask you, we're going back to pulls just for a second, with that pull out of bounds, how big do you think that's going to become, or how often, or how much do you think that's going to be utilized going forward with those double teams? Because I think double teams were just kind of at the tip of the iceberg in the AUDL as to what is possible with double teams.
Yeah, I love when the sport evolves a little bit. Like, I'm going to be off topic for a second, but like watching NBA basketball, like the sport amazingly still continues to evolve year after year. And that's like 100 years of basketball. And so Ultimate not being nearly that developed as far as high level, it feels like every year there's a new massive wrinkle. And in the way teams play defense, we've seen that sort of play out on the AUDL field with rolling out of bounds and double teams, and then having like a backside double team, or like a forced middle double team, or forced backfield. There's a bunch of different versions of a double team now. And we did have a lot of success with it in like dire situations, which is kind of interesting. And because of all our success with it, we decided to sort of break it out more often and use it strategically. And I think we're going to keep doing that, but not to give away too much. But yeah, it's been really interesting to actually see, it go from just like random opportunistic, hey, I'm nearby, I might as well throw on a double team for a second just to see if anything happens, to like planning on doubles out of stoppages all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I may be a little bit biased now, but again, back from when the league began, the players just seem to be getting taller. The athletes, not to say the athletes are getting better, again, no disrespect to those who were pioneers in the league, many of which are still around, though. It must be said that many of the ones who are on some of those original teams are still floating around on AUDL teams. And it seems like the teams are getting bigger, and the players understand that physically the work that goes in, the fitness that goes in now to the AUDL level, where you didn't necessarily have to run around. Yes, we talked about Jack, but now you're talking about the 20th man on a game day roster. He's going to run you to death. He's going to beat you. And I don't know if that was necessarily the case, back in 2013 with the AUDL, but now with the teams all getting deeper, I think the sport is naturally evolving at the same time. I mean, if that makes any sense, where just like comparing, you said the NBA, but even with the NFL, that as players just got bigger and stronger and faster, and they understood nutrition better, the sport kind of had to create rules so that people didn't die. And so unlike NFL, AUDL isn't necessarily in that boat. But yeah, as teams and players start to understand how to all be at a higher level, it's going to continue to change the rules. And we also want to keep scoring up, which does make your job on the defensive line a bit more difficult.
Yeah. That's always the tough part, is like everyone loves offense. So as someone who plays a lot of D-line on a lot of different teams, it's like, how do we spoil this? How do we find a new tweak to ruin the tweak that they're going to pull off to try to make offense better, which is always sort of a mind game, but I enjoy that just as much as the offense.
Yeah, I am waiting for that first moment when I'm not sure. There's different, whether it's a small level, but I remember in college we had a call. It was called chaos or something to that effect. It's where 6 of the 7 would kind of rush the person with the disc, hoping that they would break down. But in the AUDL, obviously that was never going to work, because it seems like everyone has Austin Taylor can throw, as you saw, Austin Taylor can throw 60 yards on a backhand from a standstill, where Ben Yacht explained it, that he thought it was going to be swung and then he'd have time for that Holzmeyer layout block for Yacht. But yeah, back to the point, as far as athletes and the better athletes do better here, well, it's the beach. So a facet of your Ultimate career is your great success on the beach. What about beach Ultimate? Is it that it's just different than playing on grass that you enjoy so much? It can't be the sand. It's got to be something else.
Yeah, it's not the sand. It is a smaller field, actually, for me. I feel like, shrinking from the AUDL size field to the club size field kind of feels like I'm playing mini, which is funny because it's a huge field still, but everything narrows up. All the lanes are smaller. All the cuts are smaller. All of the cuts I have to defend are smaller. And then it shrinks even more again on the beach when the field gets even smaller. And I don't know, it just feels like there's like a new fun. I mean, people who play Ultimate all the time already know this, but there's just a new fun element of playing on a smaller field. And then of course, the sand does help if you want to lay out. So that's nice too. So if you're defending a really small cut and just in the nick of time, maybe have a split second to lay out, you're more likely to do it if the landing is softer. So there's that. But I don't know. I found that smaller field element has been really interesting. And I think probably my favorite part of beach.
Yeah, and I know you in the past, you've spoken about, the responsibility that you might feel about getting the gospel of ultimate out into the world, especially to the Olympics. Do you think that beach ultimate is the way that it's going to potentially get into the Olympics, or do you think it's going to be 7-7 on grass?
It's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a good answer yet. I've always felt like the unique part of ultimate is the disc. And so whether it's on beach or on grass or on turf, it's still ultimate to me. And I know, the Olympic Committee has different priorities where they might want smaller team sizes, or they might want something that's like mixed, maybe that's better for TV. There's all sorts of other things they're thinking about. But to me, they're all ultimate. So I'd be fine with any of them making it as long as it's a disc. But that being said, yeah, the beach has that, like the laying out ultimate. Obviously, beach volleyball has a lot of the same stuff. There's dives all the time. There's highlights. And I suspect they want highlights. I suspect they want, I mean, ultimate has lots of highlights no matter what, but that's definitely going to help ultimate to get to the Olympics.
Yeah. So I did kind of speak about that responsibility, and now we're going to do the final third of this, and we're going to go into the different direction, because in more than a decade, you've been in ultimate. How is tech, and of course you're the guy to ask, so how has tech impacted the game or your game? And that's whether it's Brody Smith doing trick shots on some website called, I think YouTube, it might be called, or the wearable tech that you use on the field now changing and evolving as well.
It's funny. Up until this year, I don't think I really had a good answer. I've always kept those worlds like very separate in my head. I mean, at most I would wear a watch while I play, which is just counting my steps or something like that. But yeah, now this year with all the advanced stats, we're wearing little pods and have this GPS trackers on, and we'll try to get top speed and miles ran during our games and stuff like that, which is the first time I'm seeing this is this year, and I'm really interested in what kind of data we get from it. But I still think the tech has been more about, you mentioned Brody, like just spreading the sport, feeling a pretty obvious obligation with the platform I have to share the sport, and Pro Ultimate happens to be the best way to share that. So that's been my focus, and Brody did a great job kicking that off.
And when you say data, as far as not just, steps taken or traveled, but muscle recovery is getting huge too, in terms of the data sets and things. So, I mean, how do you think, again, shout out to Erwin, who's helping you guys along, the personal trainer and Match Fit Performance. So shout out to Erwin, but how is he, again, physically using that technology to kind of get you guys ready and get you guys recovered this year, even more so than what you've seen in recent seasons?
That's a good question for Erwin. I mean, I know he plans our workouts and he knows our schedule. So he's giving us workouts to do based on what we've been doing, which is great. It's tough because I'm also playing for another team at the same time. So I have to sort of like double focus on recovery as often as possible. But at the end of the day, that's what the most evolved sports do, is they take as much data as possible and then draw conclusions and take actions from it. And so we want to get to the level where we're looking at our miles ran, or we're looking at the way a player played with numbers and making him better based on that. Whether it's, tweaking the next day's workout or recovery or whatever, the diet, whatever it happens to be. I think we're almost there. I don't know if we're not the NBA yet. We don't have the world-class, like professional, dietitians following us everywhere, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Chef for every player. Someday we'll get there. We'll get there. But, yeah, for sure. So plenty of your teammates have talked about the difference between club and AUDL. And, you alluded to it here, whether it was Garden State for a long time or Pony. How do you think you've adapted your game for the different styles that you still play?
Yeah. So I've played a lot of D-line in the last couple of years, and I think continuity again has helped a lot with this, but switching and playing smarter. So, and again, this all just comes down to playing like to preserving my body better. But like, I felt like early in the Empire season at practice, when I first play for a new team, there's a lot of opportunistic switching and a lot of pointing and communication that can make switching happen. But the best switches on defense and the best coverage doesn't come from chasing one guy all over the field. It comes from like the nonverbal, like eye contact switch in the middle of a lane poach. And it just happens seamlessly and nobody's open during the entire process. Like that's the type of stuff that's really exciting for me and fun to watch evolve. So that's how my game's evolved. I've built chemistry with a lot of D-line guys, and I feel like I've seen that actually help a lot in the last season, especially. As far as club, I mean, still helps to build that chemistry. It's a smaller field, so those switches have to happen even faster. But if they happen well, there's less space to cover, and you can be more effective with them. So, yeah, that's my goal. It's just get better at playing smarter. Not running as much. I want to be the lowest mileage guy out there on D-line.
Well, I usually ask Jeff Babbitt, who, if he chose to be, could be the lowest mileage, just again, basically a free safety in the middle. I usually ask what it's like playing on the D-line with Jeff Babbitt, but you're usually behind playing in a one-on-one matchup, or if you're playing any kind of zone, it's usually in a deeper position. So what is it like having the likes of Ben Katz or the Dross brothers in front of you? And I know Ryan plays a bit more on the one-on-one coverage as well, but yeah, what's it like to have those kind of guys in front of you, and how is that supported? Whether it was, again, you also played pony with some of those guys too. So, I mean, what do they do that just seems to be so special that you hadn't seen it at lower levels, if you will?
Yeah, it's just fundamentally different. Like, it's nice to have maybe one person you have that like switch chemistry with, but when your entire line is looking to know, like when you're playing D the entire point, and you know at any point if somebody turns around and cuts deep on you and you're beat by a step, and you see Jeff out there, you can feel pretty confident like you can hand that off. And same thing that, like, if I'm the guy back there and somebody's making a really deep cut and draws an undercut on me, and I see Mike Dross waiting there, Ben Katz waiting in the lane, like I feel pretty good about that. And so the consistency of that being all over the field has helped a lot. Having one or two guys like that is great, but having two full lines of people who are all trying to get on that same page is just like, it's next level for defense.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, some of your teammates, you've been around Ultimate a while in the metropolitan area, if you will. Was there somebody prior to coming to the Empire, even when you were on the Phoenix, or again, whether it was Jabron or Maddie or Josue, you'd played with a bunch of New Jersey guys before, but there was somebody that you knew about that you never played with prior to the Empire that not only was exciting to play with, but you didn't think that they were exactly the way they would be?
Oh, on Empire? Interesting. I actually was like looking forward to playing against, I think, Ben Yacht probably the most. I don't play on the same line as him usually, but
right.
Practicing against him over and over and thinking like, all right, he's going to turn over his shoulder and cut deep now. I'll hang with him. And then he's suddenly like, nobody usually pulls away from me going deep. So it's always a trip. So that's probably one. And I mean, D-line, yeah, Ben Katz is just unreal. Like you have a nose for the disc and you can see it out there when he gets D's, but yeah, it's uncanny. Like he's good for like one or two blocks of practice where you just like throw it to him and you're like, how did I just throw it to you? I wasn't supposed to throw it to you. I don't know how you did that. So yeah, I'd say those two.
Yeah, Ben Katz, especially poaching the lane, that's one thing, but he gets his hand on so many discs. Even against Atlanta, there was two that they're not going to be hand blocks. They were completed passes, but he still gets his hand on it. I don't know how he does it. I mean, Katz is I know we already have a Matt Cat Steven, but yeah, Cat is an appropriate moniker for Ben Katz. So, all right, final little thing here. There might be new listeners here listening to this show who normally don't listen to New York Empire podcast. And we haven't really talked about YouTube at all, but with that success there, how do you go about balancing your job in tech with your life in Ultimate?
Luckily, Ultimate is mostly after work and on weekends. And so I know when it comes to like Saturday and Sunday, there's not going to be any tech events. There's not going to be any announcements. My inbox is probably not lit like it usually is on weekdays. And so I can kind of like separate that time in my head where during the week, like anyone else, I am fully focused on work. And when work is over, I can like shut that part of the brain down and then turn on the other like competitive part of my brain that wants to go run around in circles with cleats on. So I'm lucky that they don't really overlap too much. I was just thinking, actually, at one point in college, I think it was like I played GSU Club and Devil and Stevens and Hammerheads all like back to back to back to back in the same like 2-year span, which was just like nuts.
Yeah.
And having a job on top of that. So I feel like now that I'm not in school, I actually have a much easier time balancing it because I'm only playing for 2 teams right now and work. So yeah, the schedule, I just break it up into blocks and flip the switch.
Yeah, I mean, for ultimate players, unlike most of the fans listening, you do a lot of traveling. Not just you personally, but the entire team. And this year, in particular, with the Atlantic Division, going down to Atlanta for the first time ever, out to Pittsburgh, and those kind of different new venues. But with Championship Weekend now in DC, what are you most looking forward to? And I mean, other than trying to repeat, obviously.
Yeah, that's number one. I mean, Audi Field looks super cool. Excited to play there. Having, being in the same time zone, like there's a lot of little things you might not think about, but last championship weekend was in West Coast time. This year, West Coast teams come to us. So that's cool too. Yeah. And just playing teams I've never played. We're matched up with San Diego. That's another team we haven't played. I mean, I've played, Condors and Club, but that's another new team. And Chicago's obviously great. So we're going to do a lot of scouting and watching tape, but I feel like this is just going to be a fun, new creative experience, and having them come kind of close to home is a nice bonus.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Chicago or San Diego, but I think at least fans of the Atlantic Division really want to see Empire rally again, because, I mean, I don't know if my heart as the person who covers the Empire can handle that again, but I think most neutral casual fans would love to see as good as Atlanta, New York was over and over again. I think rally New York as well. So yeah, that's Marques Brownlee. Remember, he and the Empire will be in the championship, hopefully the championship game, but they will be at championship weekend starting off on Saturday against the San Diego Growlers. And then it's hopefully the championship the next day. So Marques, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
And thanks to you, the listeners, as we wrap up another edition of the New York Empire podcast and the entire New York Empire family. We'll talk to you soon.